Hello, my name is Aubrey Gokenauer, and as part of the She is the Music Connect Together mentorship program, I had the honor of being a mentee under Mary Thomas. Over the course of the summer, Mary and I discussed how important it is for our friends in the industry to have the knowledge and tools necessary to take charge of their royalties. I'd like to share with you the simple strategies we came up with, as well as provide you with a tracker template I put together using Google Sheets. In such a complex industry, it can be difficult knowing where to start. I aim to help narrow your focus so you can begin taking charge of your royalties right away. Arming yourself with knowledge now and adopting these practices will better protect you and everyone around you in the future. Arguably, the most important benefit is getting paid for your work. Money is what empowers you to create and support others in the industry. Anyone listening can benefit from the information in this presentation. Creatives, you will learn how to claim and protect your earnings. As you begin to expand your team, the groundwork you lay will give them a clear status of your accounts. Advisors and administrators, knowing and implementing these practices on behalf of your clients will ensure they're getting everything they're due. You will benefit as your clients benefit. Following these steps will help the whole industry gain cleaner metadata and more complete contracts. At the very least, this gives us all a more informed perspective of the industry we work in. By the end of this presentation, you will know how to get organized, register your works, and track your income, effectively taking charge of your royalties and getting paid. The first step in the process is getting organized. Start by setting up a calendar that's specific to your music industry endeavors. You can add project due dates, expected statement due dates, and important tax deadlines. Next, create a works list with as much metadata as you can and keep track of third-party involvement. For most, if not all of the items in your works list, you should have an agreement. You do not want to work on anything without a fully executed agreement. Moving forward, make sure you have a corresponding agreement and a signature from each party involved. Additionally, make sure you have all relevant schedules and LODs to accompany your agreement. Here is an example of how you can set up a folder for yourself. Ideally, you want all of the important information in one place. This is an example of how you could set up an agreements folder. I recommend creating a standardized naming convention for each agreement you have so you can quickly identify the important information contained in each file. Here, I've provided an example of a works list for your reference. Depending on your role, you can pick and choose which information would be most useful for you to track. You could alternatively keep track of clients you work with and their contact info, or keep a list of each marketing campaign you've been a part of. This is an example of some of the information you might want to track regarding your agreements. Over the course of your career, I guarantee you will have several accounts, all requiring varying password information. It can be a lot to keep track of, but it's especially important as you're building out your team, or if you represent multiple clients. For this reason, the final step to getting organized is to set up a password manager. There are several examples of free password managers that allow you to securely store all of your passwords in one place. I've linked to some examples at the end of this presentation if you're interested. Once you're organized, you can then move on to the next step, registering your works. Whether you are registering your own works or registering works on behalf of a client, I have listed the information you will want to have handy. Note that registering your works looks different depending on what you're registering. As it relates to music, you might be registering musical compositions or sound recordings. It's important to distinguish what exactly you have the rights to and register accordingly. Before we proceed, I'd like to mention that the following entities I bring up are specific to the United States. If you are not based in the US, keep in mind there are similar entities all over the world. The registering process begins with the copyright. Although basic copyright protection begins at inception, officially copywriting is the best way to protect your works. You can copyright up to 20 works at a time if they're on the same album. If you wrote and recorded your song, you can copyright both the composition and the recording in the same process. You may additionally want to research the trademark process for intellectual property such as your stage name, band name, or logos. If you own the rights to a composition, you have the right to collect public performance royalties. To do this, register with a performing rights organization like ASCAP or BMI. Typically, these earnings are split between the publisher and writer. If you are self-published, you might be entitled to both sides. Keep in mind, producers are often awarded a share of the composition as well. If you're ever performing your own works live, you can submit your set lists to ASCAP or BMI for even more earnings. In addition to registering with a PRO, you can also register with the Mechanical Licensing Collective. The MLC was created to administer blanket mechanical licenses to DSPs like Spotify, Apple Music, and iTunes. The MLC then distributes the earnings they collect to songwriters or composers and their publishers. Once again, you might be entitled to both sides. You will periodically need to claim your compositions in the MLC portal. If you own the rights to a sound recording, you can collect public performance earnings by registering with a neighboring rights organization. Keep in mind, artists do not currently have the right to collect on terrestrial radio play in the US. You'll only be able to receive public performance earnings on internet radio play like SiriusXM or iHeart. If you do receive any internet radio play, I highly recommend registering with SoundExchange and allowing SoundExchange to collect your international earnings on your behalf. Note, you will need to claim your works periodically through the SoundExchange portal. Neighboring rights earnings are primarily split between featured performers, think artists, and rights owners, like labels. If you're a performer releasing independently, you might also be entitled to the rights owner portion. Make sure to claim on both sides if that's the case. If you are not a featured performer or rights owner, you may still be entitled to some of these earnings via a letter of direction. This is especially common for producers. Rather than being able to claim earnings via the SoundExchange portal, you may need to submit an LOD to have your earnings directed to you. It's extremely important to include the current SoundExchange LOD in your producer agreements, as SoundExchange no longer honors old versions of their LOD format. Depending on your role, you may want to consider joining a union. I've listed some of the options and roles they represent here. Although you have to pay to be a part of each union, there are several benefits, including access to fair agreements, protection of your rights, healthcare and pensions, and lobbies. If you're a non-featured performer on a recording, for instance, a studio musician or backup singer, you might benefit from the Intellectual Property Rights Distribution Fund. You can use their search to claim your royalties, and the best part is, you don't have to be affiliated with a union to collect from US sources and certain foreign territories. These earnings are free to claim. In all cases, as you register, ensure the source has the proper contact and billing information listed for you. Be as thorough as possible as you register. This often means filling in some of the optional boxes as you register so your metadata is accurate. Do not be afraid to reach out to each source with questions regarding the proper setup of your accounts. As you register your works, keep track of what stage you're at in the process and any identifying ID or title numbers. You've learned how to get organized and how to register your works. The final step to success is tracking your income. Understand why you're receiving money and if it's accurate. Get backup. This might require setting up an account and downloading backup in the payor's portal or requesting backup directly from the source. Even if an account is unrecouped, continue monitoring backup periodically to track when you should start earning. Check your rates. Make sure they match your agreements. Make sure your entire works list is accounted for. If it's not, submit your agreements, register your works, or reach out to the sources requesting your earnings. Finally, set some of your earnings aside for taxes and unforeseen expenses, such as having to account to a new third party. Here's an example of how you might structure your statement folder. Make sure you're saving as much information as you can. This might mean downloading a PDF statement in addition to CSV backup. Consider adding a folder for each source and tracking the status of every account in some form of income tracker, like this. This is an example of some of the information you might consider tracking in your income tracker. To review, let's take a look at how someone could actually use these steps to take charge of their royalties. This is Samantha Smith. She's a singer-songwriter. She co-wrote a song titled Smile with her friend Jenny Deere. She then recorded the song with her producer, Haley Days, and released the recording on her latest EP. She got organized by keeping track of all the important dates in her calendar. She added the song to her works list and made sure to note the relevant metadata, as well as her collaborators. She also made sure she got all her agreements signed and kept track of them in her agreements tracker. She registered the composition and recording with the Copyright Office. She registered the composition with ASCAP and made sure she was getting the writer and publisher earnings since she's self-published. She only claimed 50% though, since she co-wrote. She added setlists to ASCAP as she performed them. She then registered the composition with the MLC. Finally, she registered the recording with SoundExchange on the artist and rights owner side since she self-released. She claimed 100% on both sides, knowing SoundExchange would direct a portion of her artist earnings to her producer once SoundExchange received the producer LOD. Once she started receiving earnings, she tracked them by downloading and filing all the statements. She reviewed the statements and identified the earnings related to her song, Smile, were flowing through correctly. Finally, she set some earnings aside as a safety net. This is what her works list might look like. She's tracking information about the release of the song, a few details on the composition side, additional metadata, and registration information. Here's an example of what her agreements tracker and income tracker might look like. Note, she has a couple agreements relating to the same project. She also has multiple sources of income she's tracking. If you liked any of the examples I showed you of information to track, the link I've provided here will take you to the full table. I've also created a list of additional resources you can access using the link provided. This list includes a key terms and parties glossary, links to every entity mentioned throughout the presentation, as well as step-by-step guides, registration links, FAQs, and some further reading recommendations. Be curious, ask questions, get paid. I hope this presentation has given you a better understanding of what you might be entitled to, as well as some tips for getting started and protecting yourself. You don't need to be a royalty expert. Simply getting organized, registering your works, and tracking your income will put you on the right path to claiming what is rightfully yours. I'd like to say a huge thank you to my mentor, Mary Thomas, for broadening my understanding of royalties. Thank you to She Is the Music for putting this incredible program together and letting me participate. And thank you to you, my friend in the industry, for allowing me to share what I've learned.